Nazi.
So let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about the United States. Let's talk about Germany. Let's talk about Nazis. So if you've been alive for the past few years here in America, everything now, especially in this past year, is neo-Nazi this and neo-Nazi that, the rising threat of far-right extremism. Even the Freedom Convoy is being smeared as white supremacists. They're basically anyone who disagrees with a left liberal nowadays is smeared or called a Nazi, right? We got these Nazis, white supremacists honking their truck horns. It's horrible. Everything is a Nazi, and Nazis are bad, right? And that's why we don't support them. Except when it comes to Ukrainian Nazis. We love Ukrainian Nazis. Let me introduce you to the AZOV Battalion. So, examining the threat of the Azov movement in Ukraine. The Azov movement has gained reputation and power, not only in their home country of Ukraine, but across the world. The group, which began as a volunteer paramilitary organization, has evolved and expanded since its conception. Now an integral part of Ukraine's formal military forces, its leaders are currently active in local and national politics. Although they have been marginally successful at the polls, they have been very visible in the national discussion on how to form a new post-Maidan Ukrainian identity through physical protests, online discussion, and active recruiting to their nationalist organizations. Comparing facets of the Azov to 20th century fascism reveals concerning similarities that should not be overlooked, as modern-day fascism and its violence could pose a threat to the current Ukrainian government's efforts to establish itself as a democratic European state. So basically, let's read a little bit more. The Azov Battalion began their separatist conflict. The Azov Battalion began after the separatist conflict broke out in eastern Ukraine in 2014. What that really is called is a coup that we waged on Ukraine. So we couped the Ukrainian government. They weren't necessarily pro-Russian, but they weren't ready to bend over to U.S. imperialism either. So we smeared them as a pro-Russian puppet, and we couped their elected government. The Azov Battalion sprung up in that. And the Azov Battalion is a paramilitary group of neo-Nazis. At this point, they've been officially absorbed into the Ukrainian National Guard. But, I mean, they're the frontline fighting force of Ukraine in this so-called conflict with Russia. So we have neo-Nazis here, right? And of all the countries who don't want, where everyone, let's give the neo-Nazis guns, right? The United States, Great Britain, we got to give them weapons. We got to give them weapons. NATO, we got to give them weapons. The only people who aren't giving weapons to these Nazis are the Germans. Germany's new coalition government is refusing to send lethal weapons to Ukraine, but has offered to send over 5,000 combat helmets to protect Ukrainian soldiers in case of a Russian attack. The move has been ridiculed as the U.S. and other NATO countries continue to send military support to Ukraine. In response, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has promised his country will stay in tune with the European Union and NATO policies towards Russia. So the Germans, given their history as, being split between the West and the East, their history of fascism, the National Socialist Party, and, Nazis and Hitler, they were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't give these neo-Nazis any weapons. At the most, we'll give them some helmets. And the response of the United States to that was to cajole Germany for not wanting to give weapons to Nazis. This is less than 100 this is less than 100 years after the United States supposedly, fought fascism and kicked Nazi ass. Now we're angry at Germany for not giving Nazis weapons. It all comes full circle, baby. So, neo-Nazis in Ukraine, we support them. And this made me laugh. If you guys are in the know and you know what the Atlantic Council is, this is just like neocon think tank propaganda central. But here's a story by them. Why AZOV should not be designated a foreign terrorist organization. One of these examples that the op-ed presents to the readers is that the Ukrainian AZOV Battalion, which the FBI calls a paramilitary unit notorious for its association with neo-Nazi ideology. Unfortunately, this and other references to Azov made in the op-ed are misleading, which makes the entire example unreasonable and sadly damaging for the import argument of the authors. What the authors call a Ukrainian Azov Battalion, where they add a description of it as a paramilitary unit, is, in fact, a Special Operations Detachment Azov, a regiment of the Ukrainian National Guard that is part of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. This means that Azov is neither paramilitary unit nor has any independence from the state, and that it is an integral part of official structures and that it follows orders given by the Interior Ministry. And in this effort the Atlantic Council is making to legitimize neo-Nazis, they're actually explaining perfectly why this is so dangerous to support them. They are now a regiment of the Ukrainian National Guard. They're an integral part of official structures. Neo-Nazis in Ukraine, the people that we're backing. I mean, there you have it. Us Americans, we're the freedom fighters of the world, right? Everyone owes us their freedom because of World War II, and we beat the Nazis. Less than 100 years later, now we're bitching out Germany because they didn't want to arm Nazis in Ukraine. This is the point we've gotten to, guys. It's sad. It's sad. And the Atlantic Council is super funny with this. I mean, the article goes on. It is true, however, that Azov's history is rooted in a volunteer battalion formed by the leadership of a neo-Nazi group called the Patriot of Ukraine in 2014. But, come on. Come on, guys. We're saber rattling with the other major nuclear power on the planet. No one in the world wants this war. Ukraine doesn't want this war. Russia doesn't want this war. The only people who want this war are like a couple of thousand people in the United States and Great Britain who are set to make a shit ton of money if we do this war. And that's it. Everyone else will suffer. Most of all, the people of Ukraine and the border towns in Russia. Those are the people who are going to suffer from this. And, whatever unlucky coalition troops get sent in there. It doesn't need to be a full-fledged World War III situation for there to be a tremendous amount of suffering, which there already is. So yeah, Germany doesn't want to support neo-Nazis.